This is Diamond Dave, and this is my first ever video podcast slash tutorial. I know it's probably not the first thing you wanted to hear right off the bat, but hopefully I'll have some good information here for you. The main reason I'm doing this video is to be a companion and reference material to some of my students I've been tutoring. So today I'm going to go with some very basic stuff, just kind of the features of Ableton, what they do, and how to navigate through Ableton and the different views. So let's get started here. Here we have the arrange view, and if you open up Ableton, hopefully it looks something like this. The arrange view is basically a timeline that allows you to place your musical elements in this grid here, and you see these numbers here up top. These are measures, and the measures are determined up here. Okay, here we have 4/4 time, which tells you that there's 4 beats in a measure. Quarter note gets the beat. You can change that to 3 beats a measure. But most of the time you're going to be working in 4/4 for most music, unless you're getting real experimental and doing some crazy things. So we're in 4/4 time, and right now we're at 150 beats per minute, which sounds like this. If you wanted to change that, make it slower, it could sound like this. If you wanted to tap it in, you could do that. I kind of like it fast. This is the metronome. If that's highlighted, that means it's on, and then you hear that beeping sound. It helps you to kind of keep the tempo. So if you're recording a part, you might want that. For now, we're going to turn that off. Moving over here, you have some transport options. I think you're better off looking in the manual to kind of get a better description of this. This is loop. There's a bunch of features here that you could find in your manual. Here we have some tracks. This is a MIDI track, and this is an audio track. And I want to show you the difference here. In the MIDI track, we have this soloed here. This S button is solo. In the MIDI track, you hear this part we've been playing. And this, using a MIDI track and controlling a software synthesizer, like the one I have here, Silent. I'm not going to get too in depth in the function of this, but it's basically a software version of a hardware instrument. And it's great in software version because you get a lot of flexibility with recall and automation and things like that. And so basically I have this chord progression here that you could see on the piano roll. And the piano roll here is like a keyboard. You could see the black and the white keys of the keyboard, and it even shows you the notes here. So this particular chord, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, and F, and together sounds like that. If you're having a problem hearing notes, then there's this headphones button which lets you hear it. If you have it off, you can't hear it when you press all these buttons, which may be a use for you. When you have it on, you can hear that. Here you have a fold button. Fold will basically only show you the notes that you're using in this chord progression. As you see, a lot of these other notes dropped out. So that could be great if you've kind of made a chord progression you like, and you're not going to be changing the notes, but you could be changing the rhythm or doing some editing with this. And it just cleans up the view for you a little bit. And then up here you have this little circle with the hand magnifying glass thing. If you click on that and you drag up and down, it lets you change the scale. Same goes for over here, and you'll find that in a lot of places. Obviously you could drag and highlight as well. And you see the length of here when doing the editing. You'll see this. You may have notes highlighted, but it may look at this top locator to kind of show you what you're actually highlighting the distance, because if you're going to say you're going to duplicate that, you gotta want to be even increments. So if I'm going to duplicate this, boom, 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 it duplicates it in even increments. Which, for instance, if you do it, miss it. If you do it off, then it's going to duplicate in a non-uniform way, let's say. So it's just something to be aware of. So you have a lot of editing ability in MIDI, because it's not rendered and it's not finalized. It's still digital version of sound, and it allows different possibilities. Now, when you turn that into audio, you'll see this here, and this, if I solo this, the S button here, then you'll see in here it sounds the same. And when it's in audio, you cannot change the notes because it's finalized. It's printed. It's rendered. So although you can't change the notes of this, there are different softwares that you can do to kind of change the notes, but it's not going to sound as pure as doing it in the MIDI form. So one thing to consider. And also audio allows some editing possibilities that you can't do in MIDI very easily. So say, for instance, I edit this little bit here. I double click it. Now I could see that this little bit of this phrase is highlighted here. And say I wanted to reverse that. I go over here and you get these editing possibilities. I hit reverse. It's now put that one phrase backwards. So now you have this, which allows for some interesting effects, and you could use that technique in a lot of different ways. So you have possibilities editing audio that you don't have in MIDI, and vice versa. And you could also use them in conjunction. So say you might have some parts when doing some sound design, you could have this key part and then bounce it to audio, do some variations to the audio, and then have them layered together to do some things. So it's just concepts that you need to understand in order to know how to use them to your advantage. So there's plenty of ways to get creative with both of these techniques. Now over to the right, you see me messing with some things over here. These are some options that parameter options that you could mess with here. With this yellow button, if you turn it off, you don't hear it unless you have it soloed. This could be handy when you're auditioning sounds and things like that, when you're working on certain parts of your song. This is a volume, and you could slide that down. It only goes to 6 above dB, which is over the maximum level. But in Ableton, there's a soft clip, so it allows you to push the volume up higher than digitally allows, and it will be kind of caught by Ableton, and you won't hear any real bad distortion and things like that with the soft clip on Ableton. Okay, here you have some send controls, and these send controls relate to these returns down here. Okay, so with this highlighted, you have this reverb. If I turn this up, then it's going to play through this reverb, which reverb is a audio effect that recreates the sound of a room or a space. And reverb sounds like this. You can kind of hear that little tail coming off the end of that. And then you got delay. Sounds like this. That also can be used, you might call it an echo. It's to kind of help emulate a natural space. So those were the sends are that lead to these returns here, and you could change these, which having these returns here is great because I could use that same effect on multiple tracks. So it's a good global kind of effect option. Okay, here we have on a MIDI track, you have MIDI in. So I have a few things hooked up here, and this basically it controls what is the input source of what I'm using. So if all ends is probably the best thing to keep it on, unless you're getting unless you have a lot of different kind of gear and things talking around, but mostly you're not going to need to mess with that. All channels, this is another MIDI thing, which you probably at this stage in the game you're not going to need to worry about too much until you start buying some hardware gear. Here you have options. This is an input option. You have auto and off, which these allow for the input controls. Here you have where the output of this track is going to. So this is good for routing your audio coming out of this track to different places. It's kind of standard set to master, which is your main master channel here. This is like the main pipeline. Everything goes to here, and that's your master output control here. So here is parameters. Okay, you have your basic mix parameters, such as if you go on mixer here, then you'll see things like your sends, your track panning, speaker on and off. And this other option here, silent, is all the parameters of the synth. So if I wanted to change a parameter of this synth here, say the pitch bend, click on that, that pops up over here, and you could then control this parameter. So that's a pitch bend. Now that brings us to this little line here. This is called automation. Okay, automation is it shows a change in a parameter. So like we pitched down this pitch bend of the synth. You can do the same thing with the a lot of different parameters. So for instance, track volume, which is this here, which is at 0. If we wanted to fade that out, and this value here shows you where it's going from and to. So in sound design and mixing, you have a lot of creative controls and handles for things. And when you're editing that, you have a lot of different ways to do editing. If you double click, you see these points. You could drag. You can hit Apple B, and this gives you the pencil tool, and it will show you the grid of, it'll let you, wherever you're zoomed in on, it'll let you automate in this. So you could do stutter effects, you could do a lot of things there. And then another feature of automation, say if you got this bend here, if you highlight this, you're just controlling what is highlighted. So it's kind of it adjusts in scale. One thing to be aware of. Now, if you alt click near the highlighted area thing, you could then bend it. So this creates a different slope of change in the value, which is a fairly new feature, which is pretty cool. You double click these points to get rid of them. Another thing to key feature is, say if you double click on this clip, you have similar features in this envelope setting here. Now, we were messing with the pitch bend before. You have that here, and the difference between doing this automation in this clip and doing it in this arrange view is that in the clip, it is specifically to this clip. So if you were to do some automation in the clip and then move it around, then it goes with it. Whereas if you do that automation in the arrange view, you have the choice of it moving with it or staying there. It is more of a global change than a clip change. So another thing to consider. And with audio clips, you also have similar functions. If you go to the envelope mode, you could change parameters, and you see the envelopes here. You do volume of the clip, which is different from volume of the arrange mix. So you allow for some creative control options there. Let's see. And more description of this main arrange window that you'd be using. This is your kind of file management here. If you don't see it, then you could hit this drop down icon and you'll see my file management, and you go down the categories. Sounds are sounds that came with Ableton if you got them in there. Drums are presets, drum hits and stuff. Instruments, these are all of Ableton's native instruments here. You have drum rack, you have your samplers and different synthesizers, so forth. If you go to audio effects are things you put on top of your source material or your software instrument. They might be things like the reverb that we saw down here. So these are different effects. They all do different things that affect the sound. The reverb, echo, these things add kind of environmental changes to the sound. EQ, most people know what EQ is. So these are sound shaping things. You have compressors, which help you control dynamics. So these are all plugins that you put on top of the instrument. So for instance, we have this MIDI track. You put an EQ on there. Ableton's EQ8 is great. You can see what frequencies are being portrayed in the sound. And you could make changes. Take out some of the bass. Bump up this low frequency here. You could a little more presence up here in the higher frequencies. So plugins and audio effects affect the source material. Down to MIDI effects, you have various MIDI effects that can affect the MIDI information. So this is, digital information. If we put this pitch effect on there, it goes before the synthesizer, and this pitch effect allows you to change the notes. So instead of changing the notes in this piano roll, you could change it in as a plugin. So you just have a knob for it. So you can, it allows for also other creative possibilities. So you have, this is what it sounds like. So these are not audio effects, but they're MIDI effects. It's digital signals that affect the MIDI information, as opposed to a sound type thing. Max for Live, if you got that, comes with a suite. It's great. I haven't really got into it too much. I know I need to, but there's a lot more audio effects that are kind of third-party effects that people have made, and it's kind of like, if you've heard of Reason, it's kind of more modular in the effects that you could come up with. So you could chain things together. You could do a lot of creative possibilities with Max for Live audio effects and the instruments that you come with. And a lot of people are creating different audio effects and instruments as well all the time. So you have a lot of different sonic capabilities there. Plugins are your third-party audio instruments and effects plugins. Okay, so this silent that I was using, made by Leonard Digital, is under my plugins instead of my audio instruments, because the instruments and audio effects, these are all Ableton's native products. Now plugins is everything else. So you can have synthesizers and EQs and reverbs that are not Ableton, that you can get that that sound different, have different characteristics, and those are found under plugins. Clips are clips. These are another. It's a file management that in this clip, it's showing things that I have found. Pulled out of acapellas, various little vocal clips, and you could audition them straight from here, which is a great feature. You know, everybody needs a little bit of that in their life. So that's that. Let's see, samples. These, I believe, I don't get into there that much, but I think samples are, looks like a lot of bits that I have rendered and frozen, and I don't know, to be honest, what that's a good use for. What I mainly use is, I have my folders down here of sounds. So these are sound packs. Everybody's heard of Vengeance. You might have some different sounds. So you want to have these things very well organized when you're writing a song, so it's quickly accessible. You know where they're at. They're organized, and you could quickly pull from them. So another great thing is, for instance, this VES2 bass. You could come up here in the search and you could type in that, and then it will find that sound. So say I type in reverb, go back to the plugins folder, it will show me all the plugins that say reverb. So this is a great tool up here, this search function. But to have this work effectively, you have to be well organized. So I have a bunch of different folders that just make it easy to get to things, and you could audition from here, as I said. So that's a great thing about this. Not only can you audition audio clips, but a great feature is you can save, say I take this synth, this thing I've done some work on that might even have some plugins, some effects on it. You can drag this and you can drag this over here and have all that work you've done on it over here. So then you could even audition from over here. So I have pulled this from, I said, this dolphin thing. So as you see down on the bottom here, this is MIDI, and it's auditioning this MIDI synth, this MIDI clip, with the effects and everything that I've already done to it. So it allows for a non-destructive way to save things, save little bits. Say maybe you're working on a track and you got a good idea, but it didn't quite develop into a song. Then you could save that part. You just drag that clip over here, boom, drop it in there. It saves it. You can label it however you want, and that goes for a lot of different things. So I got like little thing I made, just a little subtle little reverse thing. So reverse clap noise thing that I could layer with other things. So here's a hi-hat. So if you do some work, some programming, then you can save those bits over there. So you could easily pull them in, and you could just drag them straight to your thing you're working on. So I could drag that out. It's looped. So now I turn this one off. I got something like this. I want to throw in a clap. I take my dolphin clap thing I have here. And so on and so forth, you know. You drag in, let's see, kick. What's this one sound like? You get in there and do some editing. So the main concepts of what we went over today, we have these features up here in the transport area, tempo, how they relate to your arrange area, and then you got your track names, MIDI tracks, audio tracks, some of the features, on and off, soloing, some of the parameter options for automation, which you then can control in the mix arrange view or the clip view. And then we talked about sends and returns. You got your volumes. This is panning left to right. Your routings. You got your returns down here with effects. You got your library, your organizer over here, accessing stuff. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all we covered today. So as we get through this, hopefully next video, I'll try to do one twice a week. Try to keep them short and sweet. This is the first one, so hopefully they'll get a little bit more streamlined, not so off the cuff. So hopefully there's some good stuff in here, and hopefully stay tuned, and hopefully they get better. So catch you next time.